that ain't been us. We've never said that's who we are. But I think that we've shown throughout the years that we are two people trying to fight to stay together. From back when he was locked up, we was fighting to stay together. When we came out here to Atlanta and I wanted to still be in New York, we was fighting to stay together. Through the voice notes, we was fighting. Through this stuff with my friend, we fighting. We fighting.
The moment the cameras caught Yandy lowering her eyes, her voice trembling as she admitted something no one expected, fans knew they were witnessing history in the making. This wasn't another petty fight over social media or who followed who. This was a confession that sent shockwaves through the entire love and hip-hop community. For the first time on camera, Yandy admitted she had formed an emotional bond with someone outside her marriage. The room froze instantly, gasps echoed, jaws dropped, and the tension was so thick it felt like time itself had stopped. Mendeecees leaned back in his chair, his eyes wide but his face unreadable. Before leaning forward to deliver a line that cut deeper than any insult could, he called it worse than cheating. Those four words sent chills through everyone watching because they revealed not only his pain, but the full weight of what Yandy had confessed. Emotional affairs are usually invisible, but in that moment, every unspoken truth became undeniable. The family was divided. Friends whispered behind their hands. Fans online erupted in disbelief. What did this mean for their future? Could their marriage ever survive a wound this deep? The energy in the room was unlike anything the cast had ever felt. They had witnessed endless arguments over money, loyalty, and social media shade. But this was different. This was raw, deeply personal, and carried the sting of betrayal words could barely capture. When Yandy admitted her emotional connection, it wasn't the type of scandal fans could dismiss as a storyline twist. It hit like thunder, shaking the very foundation of her relationship with Mendeecees. A marriage that had already survived prison time, public scrutiny, and relentless rumors. The silence that followed was unbearable. Everyone turned to Mendeecees, waiting for his response. His face tightened, his hands clasped together as though holding himself back from exploding. Then he spoke the words that stunned them all. Worse than cheating. He didn't scream. He didn't curse. He said it calmly. And that made it cut even deeper. Physical cheating was one thing, but giving your heart, your emotions, to someone else, that was unforgivable. Yandy's eyes widened as she tried to explain, her voice cracking as she swore it had never been physical, that she had never crossed the line. But her words did nothing to ease his pain. Mendeecees shook his head, muttering under his breath, that love was more than what happens in bed. Love meant loyalty, respect, putting your partner above everyone else. Friends and castmates murmured in shock. Some covered their mouths. One whispered they couldn't believe Yandy admitted this on camera, while another said they respected her honesty but feared the fallout. Producers exchanged nervous glances, already knowing the scene would dominate headlines. Then Mendeecees turned to his wife and asked her directly how long this emotional bond had been going on. His words were sharp, each one like a knife. The room froze again. Yandy hesitated, biting her lip, twisting her hands nervously before admitting it happened during a period when they weren't connecting, when arguments piled up and distance grew between them. She swore she never meant for it to happen, that it began with conversations, just someone listening when she felt unheard. But that explanation only enraged Mendeecees further. He slammed his hand against the table, not in violence, but in sheer frustration. He told her she should have come to him, that if she felt unheard, she should have spoken louder, not turned to someone else. His voice cracked as he reminded her he had always put her first, even when the world doubted him. Even when he was locked away fighting to hold their family together from behind bars. The cast sat in stunned silence, torn between sympathy for Yandy and loyalty to Mendeecees. Some whispered that emotional affairs happen when people feel neglected. Others argued that real love should be stronger than temptation. Fans online would later echo the same divide, with half insisting Yandy had only done what many secretly experience, and the other half condemning her for betraying the man who had stood by her through everything. Tears filled Yandy's eyes as she reached across the table, trying to grab her husband's hand, but he pulled away. The rejection cut her deeper than any insult. Her shoulders slumped as she realized the damage was far worse than she imagined. She pleaded with him, swearing she had never stopped loving him, that the bond outside their marriage was never stronger than what she felt for him. But her words seemed to bounce off his cold silence. His eyes held a distance fans had never seen before. As emotions boiled over, voices around the room began to rise. One friend begged everyone to calm down, warning the conversation was spiraling. Another urged Mendeecees to demand the full truth, insisting that if Yandy had admitted this much, she might be hiding more. The tension was unbearable, like a pot about to boil over. Finally, Mendeecees asked her bluntly if she had ever thought about leaving him for this other man. The question sliced the air like glass, and everyone leaned in. Yandy shook her head quickly. No. Never, she said. She swore it was nothing more than an escape during a rough time. But her denial did nothing to erase the pain in his eyes. He pressed harder, asking if she still thought about the man, if she still had feelings. Her pause before answering was just long enough to stir unease in the room. Finally, she whispered that it had ended long ago. That she had moved on. That she was committed to her marriage. Her voice cracked, tears streaming as she spoke. But Mendeecees didn't move. He stared straight ahead, lost in memories of every time he had trusted her. Every time he had defended her against doubters. Friends jumped in, trying to mediate. One reminded Mendeecees that marriages can survive worse, that forgiveness is possible. Another argued that respect, once broken, can never be fully rebuilt. And staying together after such a betrayal only creates resentment. The divide in the group mirrored the storm already brewing online, where fans debated if Yandy's honesty was brave or reckless. Through it all, her sobs echoed. She begged him to understand that she had been lonely, that the bond wasn't about love, but about filling a void. She swore she had chosen him, that she had stayed, that her life was with him and their children. But the more she spoke, the clearer it became that she wasn't just fighting for forgiveness, she was fighting for the survival of her entire family. Mendeecees finally looked at her, his voice calm but chilling. He said love without respect means nothing. Respect, he said, was what she had thrown away. Mistakes he could forgive, flaws he could accept. But giving her heart to another man even emotionally was something he could never live with. The room fell into heavy silence. Everyone realized this wasn't just an argument. This was the kind of wound that could define the rest of their marriage. Yandy lowered her head, tears dripping onto her hands, while Mendeecees leaned back, his expression unreadable. The silence was suffocating, the air thick with disbelief. Everyone knew this was only the beginning of a storm that could tear through their lives and leave nothing untouched. And when Mendeecees' words sank in, the reality was clear. He hadn't just said he was betrayed, he had said it out loud, in front of everyone, stripping away the last shred of privacy they had left. Worse than cheating. Those words echoed in the air like thunder, leaving a ripple of emotions no one could ignore. This wasn't a storyline anymore, this was Mendeecees' life. He turned to Yandy and asked her if she still thought about the man she had bonded with. The silence that followed was suffocating. Yandy's lips trembled before she whispered that she had moved past it. But her hesitation was long enough to spark doubt, not just in him, but in everyone else. The tension thickened as a castmate muttered under their breath that hesitation meant guilt. Hearing it, Yandy broke down completely. She shouted that she was being cornered, that no matter what she said, no one would believe her. She cried that she was finally trying to be honest, that she didn't want to hide in shame anymore. But instead of forgiveness, all she felt was attack. Her sobs echoed off the walls, raw and desperate, until her closest friends rushed to her side. Fans later called it one of the rawest moments in love and hip-hop history. This wasn't staged. This was a woman breaking under the weight of her own truth. Online, the reaction was instant. Some called her brave, others called her reckless. Hashtags like hashtag worse than cheating and hashtag Yandy ADMITS trended within minutes. Back in the room, Mendeecees paced with frustration, running his hands over his head. His voice shook with fury. I don't know if I can trust you again. Every time I look at you now, I'll wonder who else you leaned on when things got tough. I gave you everything. I fought for us when people said we wouldn't last, and you still found comfort in somebody else. Through her tears, Yandy tried to explain. She said it wasn't about replacing him, not about lust or love, it was about feeling seen in a moment when she felt invisible. But to Mendeecees, her words meant nothing. He told her that being invisible to her was the worst betrayal of all, because he had always seen her even when the world didn't. The emotions in the room were unbearable. One friend walked out, unable to watch. Another whispered this could be the end of Yandy and Mendeecees. Even the producers, who usually thrived on drama, looked worried. The shouting slowed, but the weight in the air stayed heavy. Mendeecees buried his head in his hands while Yandy cried beside him, inches apart. Yet separated by miles of mistrust, the silence was louder than screams, and everyone knew their marriage had changed forever. Then came another bomb. A close friend revealed they had seen messages months ago that hinted the emotional bond ran deeper than Yandy had admitted. Gasps filled the room. To hear Yandy confess was one thing, but to hear someone else claim proof was another. Her eyes widened as she raised her hands in defense. That's not what you think, she cried. But the damage was done. Whispers spread like fire. Mendeecees' face hardened, his disbelief cutting her deeper than any insult. Messages? He repeated, his tone heavy. So all this time you swore nothing was happening. You were still writing to him. His quiet fury was worse than anger. Yandy tried to say the messages were innocent, about life and struggles, nothing romantic. But no one looked convinced. From the corner, Sierra smirked, whispering that innocent is always the excuse when someone gets caught. The tension was unbearable. Every eye locked on the unraveling. Tears streamed down Yandy's face. I was lonely, she cried. I needed someone to hear me when I felt like my husband didn't. It wasn't about love. It wasn't betrayal. It was just surviving a moment I didn't think I could get through. Her words split the room. Some nodded with sympathy, others shook their heads, saying it still crossed the line. Mendeecees rose to his feet, pacing like a storm ready to break. His fists clenched, then relaxed as he fought to stay in control. Do you know how stupid I look? He asked, his voice low but sharp. Years defending you. Standing up for you when the world had something to say, and you were pouring your heart out to another man. Yandy sobbed louder, begging him to believe it was over. That it was in the past, that she was here with him now. She reached for him, but he stepped back. His body language screamed a distance words couldn't bridge. The cast looked on, torn between loyalty and shock. One friend pleaded with Mendeecees not to walk away, saying couples survive storms if they fight for love. Another snapped back that emotional betrayal is poison that seeps in slowly but destroys. Completely if ignored. Sierra leaned forward, her tone dripping with satisfaction. He said it himself, this is worse than cheating. You gave your heart to someone else, Yandy. How do you come back from that? Her words stung like salt in a wound. Yandy screamed back that Sierra was obsessed with tearing her down. That she didn't care about truth, only about destroying reputations. But the harder Yandy defended herself, the more everyone wondered, was there still more she hadn't revealed? The silence after her hesitation spoke louder than anything else. Mendeecees dropped back into his seat, his hands covering his face. I don't know if I can forgive you, he admitted. The thought of you laughing with another man, sharing your fears with him, that will haunt me forever. Physical is one thing. Emotional means you trusted him with pieces of you that belong to me. His raw words shook the room. One friend cried quietly in the corner. Another muttered the marriage might already be over. But Yandy refused to give up. She stood, her voice cracking but strong. She admitted she had slipped. Admitted she leaned on someone else when she should have leaned on her husband. But she swore it was never love. Never real, just a fleeting bond during a time she felt abandoned. She swore her family was everything. That Mendeecees was the love of her life, and that she would do anything to prove it. Her desperate plea brought silence. Even Sierra stayed quiet, watching as Yandy dropped to her knees, clutching her husband's hands. He tried to pull away, but she held on, begging him not to let this mistake erase the years they had fought for, the children they were raising, the legacy they had built. For a moment, Mendeecees' face softened, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. He admitted he didn't want to give up, but he didn't know how to move forward with the doubt clouding his heart. Every time you smile at me, he whispered. I'll wonder if you smiled that way at him. Every time you tell me you love me, I'll wonder if those words belong to him too. His honesty cut her like a blade, leaving her sobbing harder than before. The cast stepped in again. One suggested therapy, another said time apart, a third admitted the damage might be too deep. Their division mirrored the war already raging online, where fans argued over whether Mendeecees should forgive or finally walk away. Just when it seemed the night couldn't get heavier, another castmate spoke, admitting they had overheard Yandy late one night on the phone, her voice soft and tender, far too intimate to sound like just a friend. The room erupted again. Arguments flared, voices clashed, and tension hit its peak. Mendeecees turned to her, his voice trembling. Was that him? He asked, no longer angry, just broken. Yandy shook her head violently, insisting it wasn't what they thought. But the cracks in her voice, the panic in her tone, only deepened suspicion. The night spiraled again, leaving the family divided, friends questioning loyalty, and fans everywhere wondering if this was the end of one of love and hip-hop's most iconic couples. As the shouting finally faded, the silence that followed was heavier than ever. But silence didn't bring peace, it carried the weight of everything left unsaid. Everyone knew the storm wasn't over. It was only waiting for the next strike. Now we turn to you. Do you believe Mendeecees is right? Was this worse than cheating? Or does Yandy deserve forgiveness for telling her truth? Let us know in the comments. And if you stayed locked through every twist and turn, hit like, subscribe for more shocking updates, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next love and hip-hop eruption.